Recently, I stumbled across this awesome use of an SVG turbulence filter and figured I'd try to apply it to my own project. Typically, this type of effect is usually only achievable with WebGL, but this is surprisingly easy to integrate in a number of different use cases through SVG. So today, we're going to build this example from scratch with the help of GSAP. So let's get started. If you enjoyed this video, check out DesignCourse.com where you can learn UI, UX, CSS, and more with my custom interactive platform that makes learning fun and easy. All right, so the very first thing that we have going on here, I have a index.html, which is almost empty. We have a section here and then a section class of content. We're going to target this and put the SVG turbulence thing in, along with a few other things like the unordered list for the content that will overlap on the SVG element. So I'm referencing a CSS main.css file that's right here. I'm using Sass for this, so I'm watching it with a live Sass compiler. You could just use straight up CSS. It doesn't matter really. This isn't like a crazy complex example. And of course, you can see it's basically empty at this point. So if I right click, open with live server, we're going to see just a big old white page in a second right here. All right. So the first thing I guess that we'll start with is I'm going to get out, we're just going to put in the unordered list first, and then we'll worry about the SVG stuff after. So the unordered list is actually pretty simple. I'm just going to start by copying some content for a second. We're just going to put an unordered list here. And then I'm going to describe each list item real quickly. So we have a list item right here. We have a link inside of it. And then we also have three elements. We have the forward trends right here. That's just to say the title of the project. This is kind of like a portfolio section or something. We have a paragraph with a class of date. And then we have a div class of border, which you'll see how that comes into effect so that we can easily animate that. We could use a pseudo before or after element, but it makes it a little bit easier just to put it in the HTML itself. Okay, with that said, all this is just I'm repeating this with unique content about like 5 or 6 more times. So I'm just going to paste that in there. Here is our unordered list. Now, if I go back to our Sass file, I'm going to get some just quick boilerplate code going here. So I'm just using I'm setting a body rule set here. Margin 0, height 100, viewport height. We're using Roboto condensed. So with that said, that's a Google font. I'm going to copy and paste that right here. By the way, you can grab the all the source code for this in the top link or the second link in the YouTube description below. I'm going to save that. And then we're going to go ahead and I'm going to focus specifically, we're going to do section, we're just going to do height, 100 viewport height. So now when we save this, it's going to be blank, but if we scroll down, we're going to see this stuff right there. All right. Now, additionally, we're also going to specify just some stuff for the unordered list. And honestly, because this tutorial really isn't about the unordered list, I'm just going to go ahead and paste in. It's quite lengthy, the rule set, but essentially, we're going to have an unordered list right here. We're doing a bunch of stuff to kind of center it and all that good stuff. The list item A, because there are 2 columns, we're using display flex. You can go through this if you wish. I am doing just some slight hover-based animations over here. You can go through this. Again, it's not pertinent to the purpose of this tutorial, but if I scroll down, you're not going to see anything. The reason is because I'm hiding this stuff by default. So I'm hiding the border with scale x0 for transform, and I'm also hiding the transform and translate, I'm hiding the span and the date element, which is the title, with translate y negative 180. You might be wondering why 180. Well, if I do maybe just 100%, you're going to see what happens. We could still see it like that. So I had to push it up a little bit further with 180, and that gets it clearly off the screen. And we're going to use GSAP to bring that stuff back in. Okay, so now let's go ahead and switch gears, and we're going to go to Figma. You don't necessarily need to use Figma for this. I just need an SVG kind of just starter point. And so all I'm going to do with basically a desktop frame here, I'm just going to hit R for the rectangle tool, left click and drag like this, right click, and we're going to go ahead and copy as. Actually, let's change the appearance for a second. Maybe something like kind of like a bright green. something like this, maybe desaturate a little bit. Okay, that's fine. So now we can right click while selecting it, copy as SVG. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to paste that SVG information right there. And of course, if we save this, we're going to see this. Okay, now we have to make some adjustments to it in order to make it responsive and all that good stuff. So first off, I'm going to go ahead and remove the width and height attribute. And we're going to leave the view box in the fill, but we're going to get rid of the XMLNS attribute. We don't need that. And then we do need to use the preserve aspect ratio attribute. All right, so if we put that right there, this right here, this stuff, the X mid, Y min slice, it's real difficult to kind of describe this, so I'm not going to go into this, but basically it's kind of a, there's settings essentially that allow you to control how the elements found within the SVG element are being rastered in terms of their aspect ratio. I found that this one here worked pretty well. I would do a Google search on preserve aspect ratio or ask ChatGPT kind of how it works if you want a better explanation. Okay, enough of that. So when we save this now and we look at this, we could see that it's basically responsive like that. Okay, so moving on, now what we're going to do is we're going to define some definitions. We're going to use the definition attribute. So DEF. All right, and something tells me this is kind of strange. Why is that white? Because it's not white on my reference code. I hope I didn't screw. Oh, it's because it's, okay, defs, plural. Okay, I am an idiot. All right, so what we want to do now is we're going to create a filter. All right, this is going to be for the turbulence filter. And then also a mask are going to go inside of the definitions element. So the first one, I'm just going to copy and paste this. Again, you can, I'm going to hit Control B here. So the filter ID is called displacement filter. You can name this whatever you want. And then we have FE turbulence and FE displacement map. Type is fractal noise, base frequency, num octaves. These two elements right here, if you adjust their values, you will greatly adjust the effect. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. Right here, you don't have to worry about this line, the displacement map, at all for now. So once we have that, we're going to go ahead also and define a mask. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and paste that. And the mask is right here called circle mask. It's an ID attribute. And then we have a circle inside of here. And this is defining the actual mask itself. So I made the position, these are positions, so X and Y, it's 600 and 800. You can play around with these values as well. The R value is the radius. So if it's 0, we're not going to see it. So if I put in 300, we will see it, but we still have a little bit of work to do to tie this all together with the rect element itself. So to do that, what we want to do is specify a width, a height, and a mask attribute onto this element. So if I paste those in, we have a width of 100%, a height of 100%, and we have the mask as URL circle mask right here. Now, before we get into looking at what this looks like, which right now it looks like this. There's nothing crazy going on. Let's real quickly specify a couple things here. So first, notice we have a displacement class right here. This is a class displacement. So we want to make a rule set that basically says displacement filter is displacement filter right there. Now the filter is right here. So it's kind of tying those two together in this rule set right here. So we're adding the filter on the displacement circle right here with the class, and this is giving it's applying this filter to this mask, or not this mask, but really the circle inside of the mask. So if we save that and we come back, now look at that. You can see this weird kind of, crazy stuff. It just looks weird, right? So it looks especially cool though when we go to start animating it. Now in the CSS, we're going to do a couple other things. We're going to target the SVG element, And that's simply a width of 100%, a height of 100 viewpercent, position absolute, z-index -1, so that it'll sit behind our graphic, or our, the type that's there, which is currently hidden, by the way. So after that, let's see if we have anything else to worry about. Yes, we want to put position relative in the section element, because we're going to have a couple position absolute elements in there. There we go. We got rid of the stuff at the bottom. And looking at that, that looks like pretty much all we need to do for the Sass or the CSS for the tutorial. So now we're going to come down here and we're going to get stuff integrated and working with GSAP and JavaScript. So the first thing I want to do, which is not GSAP, is I like to integrate Lenis, which is a smooth scroll. So if you type Lenis, L-E-N-I-S, smooth scroll in Google, you'll find more about it. I've done a video dedicated to it. Just do a channel search. But basically it just gives you a nice smooth scroll, which I like to do and integrate in these type of interactive experiences. So we're going to put script here, and this is where our JavaScript code is going to go. And then we also have to import GreenSock animation platform and the associated scroll trigger. So those two script tags are right here. Now again, if you need quick access to that, just type in GSAP 3 CDN. Top result is CDN.js, and you just need the top one right here, gsap.min.js, and also scroll trigger right here, and copy the script tag. So those are the two things that I pasted there. All right, so now that we have that, we want to register the scroll trigger plugin. So GSAP register scroll trigger, register plugin scroll trigger rather. And then we're going to go ahead and set up. Oh, and before we do that, let's get our smooth scroll stuff, boilerplate, smooth scroll. All right, so this code right here all comes from, let's just save that. That all comes from, if I type in Lenis GitHub, it comes from their getting started information. So for instance, right here is exact same code. This is the basic setup. You copy this script tag, you're ready to rock with smooth scroll. In fact, if I do this, there you go. You can see it's a nice smooth scroll there. Okay, now let's switch focuses here to GreenSock animation platform. So first we're going to say let timeline, or TL. We're going to bind that to timeline, and we're going to open up the object, and this will give us the scroll trigger. So we're going to make a couple adjustments here, and the first one is going to be the trigger. Our trigger, we're going to make it this particular section, the second one with classic content. So to put that selector in there, we're going to specify .content. The start of this is going to be top. Now, I just literally did a video 2 days ago that describes what's happening in scroll trigger, what start does and what end does. Real short, basically it means that the top of the target element, which would be content, and this means, and the second value right here simply means the top of where we're defining the scroll trigger in relation to the viewport. So it's the top of the viewport. The end is the bottom of the trigger element, which is content, and the scroll trigger is set to the top as well. You have to play around with these values, and they're dynamic because they can also accept, percentage values and negative values and all that stuff. Please watch my video from yesterday, or 2 days ago rather, to understand kind of what's happening here. Right now, I have scrub set to true. You're going to see the difference when we screw around with that because we tie the animations to the cursor position if this is set to true. Otherwise, it's just going to play based on a time duration that you can specify when these trigger elements occur. So I'm actually going to set this to false. Pin right here, this will also affect the behavior. It'll kind of do a position fixed on the target element when it's in place. So again, just experiment to see if you want to set that to true or false. Anticipate pin is another property. I think we're going to leave that off, and we'll experiment with that as well if we need to. So let's go ahead and just save that. Now we have the scroll trigger defined, and now we can take our timeline and we can start animating different things. So for instance, let's say we're going to say displacement. This is our first target for animation, and we want to animate the attribute value of R. So let's go find displacement, which is this right here. We want to animate this R value. Right now it's set at 300, but we're going to make it 0 by default because we want it to grow and then get large. So we're starting from 0. And in order to animate the attribute value, we have to open up the attribute object. And then we say R, because that's the name of the actual attribute value. And we're going to say 700. OK. We can also give it an explicit duration, especially if we are using scrub false. So we're going to say 2. All right. So let's save this. It's probably going to look a little, it probably won't work exactly how we want it to. But actually, yes, it does. I'm a liar. It's almost. We do kind of want it to repeat. So that's where we use toggle actions. By the way, to understand what's happening here with your start and end values, we're going to say marker. I'm simple. Markers. True. There we go. All right, so when we do markers, you can kind of see in the upper right corner the scroll start and scroll end where they start, and then the start and end value based on the element that we targeted. So it can kind of help you figure out what's happening in a visual sort of sense with these labels. You don't have to use them. You can just kind of comment it out if you want, but that's just a quick tip. Toggle actions is the, and again, I covered this in that other video. It just basically allows you to control when scrub false is checked and you're tying the animation to a duration rather than scroll position. It allows you to control what's happening at different stages of when the element is in view based on the scroll position. So we're just going to leave play 999, but we're going to say reverse. That reverse is going to do this. So let's refresh. I'm going to scroll down. We're going to see it come into place. And then when I scroll back out, you're going to see it shrinks back. That's where the reverse is occurring. So that way, if a person is scrolling and they scroll down and up a few times, they're going to get to see that effect occur again. So that's the power of scroll trigger right here. It's very powerful. I love it. And yeah, that's that. So there's a few other things we need to do. We can chain to our timeline method. So we could just say .to. Let's do that as well. Let's kind of get this all situated nicely. There we go. Another thing that we're going to chain in here is going to be the span element and the paragraph element. So to do that, we simply just you comma separate the selectors. And then inside of here is where we animate the things that we want to animate. Simply put, remember in the CSS we were doing transform translate y negative 180%, I think it was. So now we just want to set the y to 0. All right, and then we also, because there's multiple of these span elements and paragraph elements, there's like 6 or 7 of them in that list, we can put a stagger on it as well, which will create at a 0.1 second duration, it's going to stagger those in so that they don't all come at the same time. It's a stylistic preference. You don't have to do it if you don't want to. And then we're going to also make this start with an offset of negative, let's do 2 seconds. So these two things will happen at the same time. Otherwise, if you don't put this value here, it'll start after this stuff has finished for a duration of 2 seconds. So you can time your chained animations as such. So let's see what happens so far. Let's scroll down. Let's just scroll down right here. There we go. All right, pretty good so far. We also have that little border I want to kind of animate in afterwards. So we're going to say 2, and we're going to say border. That's a class right there. It's just a div element with border. We're going to say scale x 1. All right, because we're using transform. Let's see, scale. Yeah, let's find border. Transform scale x 0. Okay, so now we're just going to set that to 1, and then stagger is going to be 0.1 as well. And then we're going to make this also start at a negative 2. So let's save that. Let's go back. Let's scroll down. Let's scroll here. And there we go. All right, we're getting close. And I'll show you, by the way, how to change this to an image that it reveals as well, which is very cool. And that's basically it in that regard. So that's all the HTML or in the JavaScript essentially that we need. So you're probably wondering, okay, so we have a solid color here, And again, I want to show you real quick before we proceed how to play around with these values. So essentially, like, let's change num octaves to like from 1 to 3. What does that do? All right, so it kind of makes it a little bit more grainy in a sense. I mean, we can really exaggerate it and like put it up to 10 and see what that does. All right, so it just kind of defines, it has a lot more ripples. All right, so let's back up. If that's 1, let's set this like at 1 and see what that does. All right, so if I get out my zoom tool real quick, zoom it, there we go. And I show you what's happening here. Look how fine that is. All right, so if you want something that's like really smooth, how about 0.01? Look at that. It's really just a smooth sort of shape. So it's all depends on what you want stylistically for this to work. So let's also go ahead and let's change this rectangle into an actual image element, which is very cool. So I'm going to take this element here and I'm just going to comment that out with Control/, and I'm going to paste in an actual image element that is going to allow us to choose whatever image we want to mask, and it could make it actually way extra cool depending on the image that you use. So in my reference monitor, I'm going to go ahead and grab that HTML real quickly and then just paste it in. So that HTML looks like this. It's image. Here, let's move this over here. Image style transform is translate x -20%. I did put this here inline CSS just to kind of position the image itself. You may have to do this for it to look well in the context of your project. Now we're also using this href, which is just referencing literally an Unsplash image that I found that works well. We have a width of 100%, a height of 100%, and then same thing as the rect version. We're setting the mask URL circle mask, which is in reference to this mask ID here. This has the same thing. So if we save this and go back, look at that. So you might be wondering, what does this picture actually, what does that actually look like as an image? And if we just go ahead and copy this and paste that, let's go over here. There you go. I'll show you what that image looks like. It's just a square image that looks like this. And that's what we're revealing. So if I go to Unsplash real quick, and I choose another light photo because we have text sitting on top of it that is dark, and I'll just type in light photograph or light photo or something like that. Let me find one that might work pretty well for our use case. Again, I don't want to take forever here. Perhaps I'll just grab, let's grab this one. I'm going to right click, copy image address, and then just paste that in right there. We'll save it, go back, refresh. Now that doesn't look as cool because again, it's not positioned correctly. That's why I used that transform right here, translate x -20. So you may have to reposition it based on the dimensions and the aspect ratio of the image. But here's our original, and I think it looks really, really cool. It looks and works really well as well when we're on a large monitor like this. Awesome, awesome stuff. If you enjoyed this and you want to learn more about this kind of stuff, definitely check out DesignCourse.com, the UI UX course, the CSS course, and the upcoming Advanced Front Ends course, where we really tackle stuff like GreenSock animation platforms, some 3JS, and just really awesome interactive websites. So that's going to be coming up later this year in 2023. Enter your email to be notified when that releases, and I will see you all soon. Goodbye.